Guys, this is Movie-holics Anonymous, Jacob Ballard here, reviewing The Mummy. This is my latest rental review, and for the record, this is the 2017 version of The Mummy starring Tom Cruise. The most terrifying thing about this film is the fact that it's just barely better than Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, which was the third final Brendan Fraser Mummy movie, which is one of the worst movies ever made. This movie's just a little bit better. It's pretty sad. So the new Mummy movie is directed by Alex Kurtzman, who has only directed one movie before this and never directed an action movie. But he's helped write and produce the Transformers movies, and you can definitely tell in the way he films the action that he kind of wants this movie to look like a Michael Bay movie briefly. And that's not necessarily wrong because, visually, the Transformers movies look great. The problem is that the direction and the editing together and some of the special effects are so amateurish, so poorly done, that you really can't tell what's going on. The editing in this movie makes the action impossible to follow. You'll be seeing a character drive a car off. You'll see the character stop the car suddenly, but it doesn't give you enough time to register that he stopped because it doesn't even look like he stopped enough for the person to get in the car, but then it keeps going. Stuff like that is throughout this movie. During the fight scenes, you can't tell what is going on. These zombie things, you can barely see them. They just attack, and then they're gone within seconds. And there's several things that are, scenes where you're like, well, that could have been cool. And I've seen something cool like that before in an Indiana Jones movie or something else. Another action or horror movie. And you're like, that's cool in that movie, but here it's not. Because everything is so rushed, so poorly conceived, so poorly executed that you just don't get time to enjoy hardly any of it. And all the bird scenes, I'm like, wow, if this guy directed the Birds remake, it would be one of the worst movies ever made. Because it's not scary, it's not suspenseful when these birds attack. They look stupid, they're just crappy CGI. Trying to think how else to describe the action scenes. It's basically like you're watching the most rushed action scenes you've ever seen. They just do not flow. And considering this movie tries to be like an Indiana Jones movie starring Tom Cruise for a good portion of the movie, that's pretty disappointing. And now let's get into the comedy aspect of this movie. This movie tries to be funny. It has Tom Cruise in it and Jake Johnson. And Jake Johnson plays a sidekick who complains all the time and makes jokes. Jake Johnson does the same thing he does on New Girl, except for he's not funny in this, and he doesn't fit in with these characters, and he's just annoying in this movie. Every line of dialogue he says is painful, it's unfunny. The screenplay, there's not a line of dialogue that is funny in this entire film. That is ridiculous. That's unacceptable. On top of that, let's talk about the monster universe thing, the building of the monster universe. Russell Crowe is Henry Jekyll. Mr. Hyde is pretty good, I guess. I mean, he's pretty much the same character he was in Man of Steel if he had a dark side. And Russell Crowe does what he does best. He gives you your exposition, he explains what's going on in this universe, and some of the ideas of that are cool. I mean, the idea of having all these monsters together in their own cinematic universe in the modern day is a cool idea. I really think that's a cool thing, because it's different than superheroes because they're monsters and gods. But the problem is, while Russell Crowe's interesting, everyone else in this movie is terrible at acting in every single way, which brings me to a major point. Tom Cruise is terrible in this movie. His character is unlikable. He's forgettable. He doesn't bring anything to this movie. There's only one scene in this entire movie where having Tom Cruise in this movie was necessary to make it work. And that scene is when he runs up to the mummy with a branch and is about to swing at her with the branch like it's a baseball bat, and she just smacks him in the air and he lands on his butt. That scene is one of the best scenes of the movie. It's hilarious, and it works because you're so used to seeing Tom Cruise always win no matter what in the Mission Impossible movies. And other than that, he sucks in this movie. And I like Tom Cruise, but he was terrible in this movie. And as for Annabelle Wallis, she's one of the worst actresses working in Hollywood. She sucked the life out of Annabelle, the first horror movie, prequel to The Conjuring, and she's terrible here. She brings no charisma. There's no chemistry between Annabelle Wallis's. There's just no chemistry between her and Tom Cruise, and her character is boring. and she's always needing to be saved like every 5 seconds, but it's so rushed that you barely even register the fact that she has to be saved so much because she just like gets in the situations over and over, but it takes like 10 seconds for her to get into them, and within 10 seconds she's also out of them. It's so stupid. And then Sophia Botella, I don't know how you say her name, sorry if I said it wrong, she plays Amanat. And how was she in this movie? Not good. All she does is the Enchantress style acting that Cara Delevingne did, and then in the Suicide Squad movie, she walks seductively and she walks slowly towards her victims. Other than that, she doesn't act in this movie. She's just like, look at my body. The director's like, look at her body. We're gonna show you so much of her body, but it's PG-13, so they only show so much, and it's all like, it's the most basic. It's the worst thing you imagined when you found out the mummy was gonna be a woman. You're like, yeah, it's just so they can show her naked. Pretty much as they could without getting an R rating. And other than that, let's talk about The Mummy as a horror movie. There's nothing scary in it. It doesn't even really feel like a mummy movie because it's more revolving around Tom Cruise's Nick Morton, and it just doesn't work on hardly any levels. There's a scene where Tom Cruise's character fights Mr. Hyde, and that's sort of interesting. There's a scene where they have a sandstorm that's kind of cool, but I mean, it's like, they got that from the last Mummy movie, and it was better in the last Mummy movie than this one. But it is cool to see how the glass shatter as Tom Cruise runs. That scene's okay. But I mean, as a whole, this movie just doesn't have anything to offer. It's one of the worst movies of the year. It's one of the worst. I mean, it's the second worst Mummy movie ever made that I've seen. And I just was very disappointed in this movie. I'm going to give it a 0.5 star out of 5, which means never watch it. It's a waste of time. It's an example of how to make a movie with just no storytelling, no art to it, just a complete waste of time. Until the next review, guys. See you guys.